It's a real treat to be here this morning and join my colleagues and welcome you all to San Jose State University, where you're joining a very diverse and dedicated faculty who's committed to cutting-edge research, creative activity, and high-end teaching practices. And of course, you're joining one of the most diverse and impressive student bodies at one of the most transformative institutions of higher education in America. So that's pretty cool. I think my experience with graduate students in the 5 years that I've been here is that they don't simply go on to find their futures when they graduate from our programs. They go on to build and create new futures in the private sector, in government, and in public service. And so, you know, when I was preparing for today, it occurred to me that, well, this is a speech. I don't give a lot of speeches. I do research talks, I do lectures, I do presentations. I don't do a lot of speeches. So I scratched my head on the plane flying back into San Jose a couple of days ago, and I thought back to what lessons I might have learned about this, and I remembered my 10th grade English teacher, Mrs. Santoro. She said, "It's often a good idea to begin a speech with a quote." So I hope that counts. You know, the principal topic that I was asked to address today was getting to know the key players in graduate study here at San Jose State University, and with attention to the graduate coordinator. And so when I was preparing, you know, my remarks for today, I started thinking, you know, I remember too well what it was like to enter graduate school. Like most of your faculty members, I did that, depending on how you count, 2 or 3 times. And each experience was roughly the same. I don't recall it getting particularly any easier the second time than it was the first time. It was this mixture of feelings like, all right, I made it. I'm going to do the thing. And, oh God, what on earth is going on? I have no idea what to do, right? And, you know, it's like having a giant thought bubble and just not a thing in it in front of you sometimes, right? And so with that in mind, while I will begin by talking about sort of building your network here and knowing the key players, I'd also like to comment on a couple of the things that I really wish I learned earlier as a first-generation college student, and certainly a first-generation graduate student after that. So I'm going to discuss the networks you'll build here at San Jose State University, and then go on to talk about communication, some challenges of graduate study, and close with an invitation to distinguish yourselves and to practice excellence. And so with Mrs. Santoro in mind, real person by the way, as one of the first transformative figures in my educational career, I want to encourage you to build your own networks at SJSU with a sense of purpose. You know, we don't work on advanced study alone, but in community, so it makes sense to know who the players are and how to best work with them. So I want to walk you through just a few of them today. So let's start with the graduate coordinator. That is my role in the Department of Anthropology. And in each department and program, this is the faculty member that is charged with guiding you to completion of your degree, a responsibility that variously entails informing you of program requirements and deadlines, helping you make informed decisions about program options, organizing events, and generally serving as your all-around advisor until you are paired with your thesis or project advisor. After which point, the graduate coordinator continues to sort of serve as an advising resource to you. And you know, that's at least, you know, the tasks of the graduate coordinator that I just ran down are basically the student-facing ones. You know, we work with our departments. I work with the faculty in my department to make decisions about admissions, to make decisions about department policy, to coordinate faculty review of student performance, and to make sure that we as a faculty speak with one voice when we address you and guide you through our program. And, you know, students will come to me throughout their career. The questions I often get, sometimes a student begins as a full-time student and they decide, because many of us have competing priorities of work and family and outside responsibilities, right? So what happens if I go full-time? How do I do that? And there's not, few programs have a one-size-fits-all answer to that, right? That's what the graduate coordinator is there to help you with. What happened, as some of the earlier speakers talk about, if you decide to take a leave or take a semester off, right? How do I make sure that I don't sort of spin out of orbit from my program? How can I make sure that I can make my way back in? That's your graduate coordinator is going to help you, right? Tailor a plan that works for you, whether it's full-time or part-time or taking a break, because let's face it, life happens. The graduate coordinator can help you with this. How do I advance to candidacy? I barely remember anything that people said to me on the orientation when they explained all this sort of stuff because I was so nervous and I was just hoping that I got the thing, right? Talk to your graduate coordinator. When you're ready for your culminating experience, whether it's that project report, that thesis, or that culminating exam, how does that work? How do I prepare? What's the timeline? What are the due dates? What are the deadlines? Well, I'd like to encourage you to check on the website too, because plenty of us have FAQs. But once you've done that, and if you're not satisfied, that's your graduate coordinator. So I think it's wise to get to know your graduate coordinator and check in once a semester or more often as necessary. We're here to serve you. That's our job. And so the next person I'd like to discuss is your project or thesis advisor. And this is the expert that you're going to pair with to guide your research, your project, or your creative activity. The process for pairing with a project or thesis advisor, it varies by department. Again, so I can't give you a one-size-fits-all answer to that. Some departments will assign students to a faculty advisor based on their field of research or their project or their creative activity, whereas others, as we do in the anthropology department, we allow students and faculty to sort of feel each other out and find a good fit, usually by their second semester. Ask your graduate coordinator how this works in your department if you're unsure. Now, once paired with your faculty advisor, do your best to cultivate a healthy and productive relationship that advances both your individual and your shared interests. This is the person who's going to be, the main point person in your department in training you and guiding you through your research, through your project, or through your creative work, right? And so we're all working together to do great things. And oftentimes, and I'm a classic example of this, it's hard to get out of our own way when we're building these relationships. A few years ago, I was invited to give a speech at an event in honor of my advisor, Linda Whiteford, who had just announced her retirement, and I was asked to address the Society for Applied Anthropology and to discuss her contributions to the field and to my own work in environmental anthropology. Honest to goodness, I spent the first 5 of my 20 minutes just apologizing for being such a difficult and headstrong graduate student and for resisting her advice and guidance often when I needed it the most. So I think my experiences, they are what they are and they got me where I am one way or the other. But if there were one thing I could go back and change, it would be to maybe not be so headstrong when faced with the guidance and feedback I received from my advisor, someone who I admire tremendously. And so we had a few laughs over this during and after the talk, and she said that she hoped I'd learn something from all this experience about how to better work with students myself, and she assured me that I'd have plenty just like me. I certainly hope I did learn something. My experience has been that the best relationships between advisors and students begin with openness and to learning and effective communication. I'm forever telling students that you should not expect to leave San Jose State with the same ideas and perspectives you came in with. Learn to appreciate new ideas and methods for doing things. Know that we all have room for growth. Share your ideas, your writing, and your works with your advisor and welcome the feedback, especially the feedback that challenges you. There will be days when that's harder and days when it gets easier. I'm not encouraging you simply to follow, to be sure. Be bold, but be open to feedback, revision, and reflection, because that's how we grow. That's how we develop here, right? And so we're all working together to do great things. Work with your advisor in the spirit of collaboration, and you'll go far. But these aren't the only faculty you're going to meet along the way, are they? Got a pencil on the floor here that's determined to knock me over. I'd like to encourage you to get to know the faculty in your departments. Learn about their interests and expertise, and know that you're not limited just to your advisor or graduate coordinator. Build your network with other faculty. In some departments, you'll not only complete your project, research, or creative work under the direction of a sole advisor, but with a committee that can include 3 or more faculty advisors. Again, check with your graduate coordinator if you're unsure how this works in your department. Now, whether a given faculty member will serve on your committee or not, it's a good idea to learn from the diverse range of expertise that the faculty have to offer. You'll be so much richer for it, I assure you. You know, one of the best things I did as a new graduate student years ago was to read up a little on the faculty in my department, browsing their faculty pages and some of their articles to learn more about their work and expertise. And then I scheduled meetings with them, as many as I could, early in my very first semester. I went during their office hours. And I learned a lot from chatting with them, and I asked each one key question. Right? And none of us can get up here and give you a one-size-fits-all answer to this key question because of the diversity of programs and departments represented here in this room. And that one key question was this: what do you think I should do to ensure that I am successful in this graduate program? Seems obvious enough. And I got some really terrific advice, and I built relationships that were incredibly rewarding, not only during my graduate study, but they've continued to be so. Plenty of them to this day. And so, beyond the faculty, your peers in the graduate program are some of the most important players in your network. You do not need to go this alone. Look to alumni and students in the cohorts ahead of you for mentorship. They've been through your program and can provide valuable advice, not only on graduate study, but also on transitioning into your career beyond. And look to the students in your cohort for peer review and for mutual support. Now, whether it's a work of writing or other creative activity, it's all about revising and editing, and your peers are indispensable sources of feedback. I don't know where I would be today if it weren't for the trusty eyes of Carolina Bahamondes, Mark Aber, and Jason Sims, who were simply unafraid to look at my work in graduate school and provide insightful, constructive, and at times very inconvenient feedback, and to accept the same from me in return. We're all today better at what we do as a result of this, and carry with us an abiding commitment to building and maintaining new networks and to generously paying forward the mentorship that we have received. And all right, let's be honest, the deadline is tomorrow and you've only just finished your draft today. Give it a shot. No one's perfect with deadlines. Shoot one of your peers an email. Chances are maybe they just finished that draft themselves, so be prepared to reciprocate in short order. These are some of the wisest relationships that you can build and some of the best practices that you can build with peers in your cohort as you go through graduate school. And so, speaking of reciprocation, remember that as you progress through your program and are mentored by peers and faculty, this translates into an obligation to serve as a mentor yourself. A couple of years ago, a very important mentor and now very close friend of mine was up for a new position, and he asked for me to write a letter of recommendation attesting to his role as a mentor to graduate students and young scholars in the field. And it was a rare opportunity to reciprocate, to give a little back to him for all that he'd done for me over the years. And I honestly caught myself choking up as I wrote the letter. And while I'd always felt this deep and abiding commitment to mentoring students, this was the first occasion I really had to take stock of that and the importance of mentors in my education and career, and to articulate, the importance of paying that forward. And I know that the faculty and students and alumni in your respective programs feel this sense of commitment and obligation, and I hope you'll soon feel it in yourselves. The fact is that we cannot really pay anyone back for mentorship, so we have to pay it forward. That's the only way. And, if my wife were here today, she'd be sending me signals from the front row like this. And this is an Italian gesture that roughly translates to, man, you got to be so heavy all the time. Can you lighten it up a bit? And so I can see her right now waving to me. So please, make friends with your peers, hang out, Treat yourselves to some downtime. You deserve it. The relationships that we form here can last a lifetime. In recent years, the students in my anthropology program, they've formed these group chats, which I understand they've used to organize study events, but also social events, and I gather a good deal of gossip. Anytime someone shares the gossip from me, it seems to have originated on those group chats. Find ways of building community with the students in your program. These are relationships that will last some time. My last comment on the network is to point to our facilities at San Jose State, and I hope you'll learn more about this in the course of today. Did you know that the Martin Luther King Jr. Library is the largest library building in the Western United States and the largest joint university public library in the country? In addition to massive print and digital collections spanning every conceivable discipline, the library is home to special collections, public art, rotating exhibits, tech resources, meeting rooms for students, quiet study halls, and a good deal more. Schedule a tour or visit your department's library liaison and learn more. And get to know the lab facilities and studio spaces available to you through your department. We're constantly building our labs and facilities in the Department of Anthropology, and I'm forever exploring new corners of the library. And one of my favorite pastimes is to pop in on my friends in engineering and to check out their new digs. They've constantly got cool new toys over there. So take advantage of all that we have to offer here. Now, having discussed the key players in your graduate study network, I'd like to take a moment to talk about communication, specifically genres of communication. I joked about this earlier in my remarks about contrasting speeches and research talks and lectures, but it's rather important to think critically about genres of communication and how to use them appropriately. A research talk, which focuses on presenting empirical findings and articulating their significance for a problem or theory, is a different genre from a motivational speech, just as science fiction and romance novels are different genres. Often we're faced with distinctions in genre when we move between messaging with our friends and communicating in professional or academic contexts. And so I often introduce the idea of genre to students by sharing a typical email I invariably receive almost every semester. It goes something like this. Hey, this is Mark. I was wondering when the assignment is due. Don't be Mark. And we can spend a moment dissecting, all that is wrong with this message. What class, what assignment. Dude, you'd never address the professor as, hey. But the real point is a mistaken genre, right? I think that if Mark had consciously recognized that he was no longer writing in the genre of texting with friends and instead was composing a message in the genre of professional correspondence, then, I'd like to think that he'd sort many of those details out for himself. I'm pulling for you, Mark. This is a lesson worth learning and practicing regardless of your discipline. Are you asked to give a 5-minute Ignite talk about your research or your creative work? If so, you're going to give a low level of detail, point out the sort of key facts and takeaways that really pop, and move on, leaving people wanting to learn more and ask you questions afterwards. Are you writing a literature review on your research topic? If so, you want to summarize key themes, findings, points of departure that inform your study. Is your creative work meant to entertain or provoke thought and action? And genre is not only a matter of your material, it also depends heavily on your audience, much like Mark's infamous email. Are you addressing people in your field or people outside your field? This should affect your genre of communication as well. If I were speaking only to anthropology students today, I'd be saying a lot of different things. There'd be some very common themes, and you'd be sure you'd be hearing about Mark. But I would tailor it more to anthropology students and more to the details of our program. So we can blend genre for sure and mix things together, but we should do it with a sense of mindfulness about what we're blending and how. So practice genre and know your audience. Now, having shared a little bit about building your network and communication skills, I want to come out and address what is a common experience for graduate students and high-performing professionals across all fields. And I'm speaking about crises of confidence, or what some people refer to as imposter syndrome, which could be described as a sense that you've managed to get where you are by somehow faking it and now you're in over your head. One of the reasons I was so anxious to meet with the faculty and learn what I needed in order to succeed in graduate school is because I was concerned that I didn't measure up to my peers in my cohort. And so that was not the last time that I felt that way. And it still comes to me from time to time. But here's the thing. This crisis is a confidence trickster, and one that can be handily defeated. I learned recently from my friend Dr. Evan Palmer in the Department of Psychology that social psychologists often refer to this as the Dunning-Kruger effect, or our tendency to sort of overestimate our knowledge at times and underestimate it at others. So our confidence is often high when we're least conscious of the fact that there's so much more to a given topic or field that we thought, and now we start to realize that there's more to it, and there's always more to it. And this can trigger a crisis. And sometimes it just happens because we're stressed or sleep deprived. Either way, there's two handy remedies for this. The first is simply to create a to-do list. You're not going to make it, any type of anxiety just disappear with the snap of a finger. Create a to-do list. Chip away at it one item at a time. You can't make yourself an expert overnight, but you can check one thing at a time off your to-do list of increasing your knowledge and practicing your methods. Each item you check off your list puts a little more distance between you and that confidence trickster. Until you come to appreciate things with greater depth and breadth and complexity, building true competence along the way. The other thing you need to do is to talk to those people in your network, the ones that I've just mentioned. Visit your advisor, your graduate coordinator, talk to your peers. Not only will they give you perspective like, dude, you are being too hard on yourself, and they'll help you with your to-do list, but they'll also let you know that they've been there too. You're not alone. You got this. So I'd like to close today by just saying something briefly about excellence and calling on you to practice it. The ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle taught that excellence is neither an attribute, a deed, or an accomplishment, but a habit that you cultivate. We are what we repeatedly do. The good news is, this gives us a little room to have an off day. But excellence requires us to make a habit of showing up. And because we strive for excellence as part of a network, as part of a community, we must therefore realize that we're not just showing up for ourselves, but also for those around us. I mean, look around you. You're surrounded by Spartans who are counting on you to make of their community one that is rich with creativity, knowledge, discovery, inquisitiveness, and distinction. You not only owe it to yourself to do great things, you owe it to each other. The people who join you in classes and projects will get that much more out of it, out of their time here, if you put that much more into it. You too will reap the rewards that others contribute. A few years ago, I was speaking to a colleague and a personal hero of mine, an anthropologist at Arizona State University named Amber Wudich. We were collaborating on this project I was leading, and I tentatively proposed a deadline, and I asked her if she could get her part done by then. She stopped dead in her tracks, locked her eyes on me, and unflinchingly said, "I hit all of my marks, AJ Fass." And I thought to myself, yes, say that. Be that. Aspire to that. Be the person who can, stand there and look someone in the eye, right, and let them know that you hit all of your marks, right? Encourage that in others and help them be able to cultivate that capability, right? We've all heard that oft-repeated advice, fake it till you make it. This is utter nonsense. Face it until you make it. Recognize setbacks as invitations to try again. Focus on that to-do list. Build your economy, hit your marks, and work together to build great futures. We got this. Thank you very much.